Hey guys, let's begin. The following incident caused fatal injuries to the current number 2 hero Endeavor. Number 6 hero Mirko however did not sustain any injuries and will be in remission shortly. The vigilante who originally named Ghost Rider continues the killing spree which seems unstoppable at this point. The last hope we have is you All Might. May no more bloodshed happen at your watch. With that, TV was turned off by Momo. She held the black object close to her chest and looks down at Todoroki, who was frozen on the spot of the couch he's seated. They were getting along just fine and decided to take advantage of the Sunday by watching any movies. Turns out, they switched to the wrong channel at the wrong time. Todoroki, usual void of emotion faces, now has the expression of shock, confusion and fear. Fear of losing someone who he thought he hated the most. But somehow he can't hate the person anymore. The difference between Shoto and Enji is that Shoto still has a longing and young heart. It cannot handle any sudden shock. Ghost Rider, the notorious Green Flame, finally gone through his father and beat his old man so bad he is almost at a near-death bed. The students are all now is scared. The number 2 is defeated and almost died. What chance do we have, they all thought. Bakugo brain cannot reach to a decision. Whether or not he should be sacred or laugh it off. Or whether or not he should stand up and accept this non-verbal challenge or cower back into his sheet. Todoroki moved finally. He rested his elbows on his knees and plants his face right into his palm. He's visibly is tensed. No friends of his don't know what to do. Izumi also don't know what to do. Soon enough Mr. Izawa enters the hall with Midnight, and by the looks of it, the heroes also is aware of the incident. Obviously. Izawa looks at Todoroki with his usual dry look and sighed. Todoroki, come. Your sister wants your company at the hospital, Izawa announced, gaining everyone's attention. Oh. Mr. Izawa? Is it true? Is Endeavor? Mina's question died down before she realized the situation. Not now. Ashido, Izawa calmly says. Todoroki without no words stood up and followed Izawa out of the dorms. The son of the famous number 2 hero never thought there is someone out there who could defeat Endeavor other than All Might and him. Now this vigilante who popped out of nowhere almost a short time ago, annihilating whoever crossed his path. This is chaos. Nobody, even professionals, doesn't have a single clue. What's the motive behind this killing spree? Why murder villains and heroes evenly? The reason behind only could be answered if they get a hold of the newly identified vigilante, the Ghost Rider. A name that sends shivers down everyone's spine. Especially after what happened to Endeavor and Mirko. Young Shoto. Todoroki heard All Might calling him. Toshinori stood on the doorway to the exit in his buff form. Fighting with the Noma made it hard for him to switch to his power form. He recently spit out so much blood and that never happened before. Todoroki blankly stared at All Might. Young Shoto. May I have a talk with you? All Might asked hopefully. Sure. Came Todoroki cold answer. All Might took Todoroki in secluded area of the academy and looks down at the young man. I may sound stupid. If it does, forgive me. Are you feeling okay? I know it's a lot to take in. Shoto looks up at All Might and shook his head. I don't know. Am I supposed to feel fine? All Might sighed, knowing he did sound really stupid. Look, young Todoroki. I want to talk to you about something. I know it's hard to take in, but heroes do sacrifices. The responsibilities are much more bigger and sometimes it's hard to fulfill your role in it. Your father knows that too. I want you to know that. All Might says carefully as he could. By the looks of it, it's really hard to miss the troubled eyes of Shoto, and All Might knows how it feels. You don't speak a word, All Might. My old man sees you as an opponent and my all life. I was taught to hate you. To overcome what you built up. Whatever you say. It doesn't matter no more. And I'm not feeling anything at all. Shoto says. Anything else you want me to know? Todoroki questions. All Might senses the uneasiness and shook his head a no. Nothing else. You may go now. All Might instructs and Shoto left. Maybe. Whatever he'll see at the hospital may create a fear in him. If not, the strongest and cruel man to ever exist for him is his father. And seeing that strong father fallen is not something he ever expected to see. His sister sat next to the ICU. A solemn look on her, and by seeing that, Shoto theorized that it's really something to be worried about. Then he thought. Shoto walked slowly to the door, but his sister stopped him. "You can't. Doctors won't let anybody in yet," she said sadly, earning a nod from her little search brother. Fuyamai looks up at him and patted the seat next to her, asking him to sit down next to her. Shoto took his time, but he did as she told him to. Fuyamai is thinking she do owe him an apology. "Shoto, it's something I need to talk to you about. It's kinda bugging me." Fuyamai started. Shoto looks at her for a moment and nodded her to continue. It's about about father," she said, and the father word came out as a lagged breath. Knowing what's going on with her family and her so-called father, and how Shoto was treated, she sure as hell feels sick to call Endeavor her father. Her siblings gone through enough, and she knows how much they're unforgiving when it comes to their father. "What about it?" Shoto calmly asks. "I think I owe you an apology. To find out about him the way you did. I should have informed you myself. I'm sorry." Fuyamai finished her line, but Todoroki shook his head. "It's better this way. If you informed me before the news I saw, maybe I refused to visit. Something about this green flame or the ghost rider somehow attracted my attention. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe not. Either way, I hate to see you keep apologizing for what he's reasonable of." Shoto confessed, which obviously didn't appreciated by Fuyamai. But she understood why he said that. However, deep in her mind, she knows that Shoto do care, even if it's not involved by Ghost Rider. After all, they are the same blood. "Have you visited mother?" Fuyamai asked. "Not yet." "Does she know?" came Shoto question. "Her hospital room has one of those LED TV. I won't be surprised if she heard the news already," Fuyamai replied. Then there was a silence between them. Fuyamai wasn't doing much, but Shoto is lost in his thoughts. There's part of him telling him that now there's something to fight the vigilante for. Not sure why, but he thinks that way. Maybe the urge to surpass his old man came with the ultimate plan of defeating the someone who almost killed Endeavor. Maybe defeating the infamous Ghost Rider will consider as surpassing Endeavor. Maybe even All Might. As far as he's aware, nobody ever saw the limits of this dangerous vigilante, and Shoto is happy to figure it out himself. Meanwhile, Kodaki happily sat facing its master, who happened to be deep in his thoughts. They are both on the top part of this ancient church, enjoying the cool wind rustling the vegetation around. Dark clouds happens to be a regular occurrence, but the dark vibe it gives, strangely, was soothing for Deku and his companion. They were chatting like a long-lost friend meeting once again. But Deku thought of something else. "Do you ever wondered how come we're still here, living our lives as if we never died?" Deku says to Kodaki, who seemingly understanding what he's saying and tilts its head. "Wonders never cease to end, I guess. Funny thing is, before I got you, my mind always stayed blank. Maybe I never realized how lonely was I until I'm not lonely anymore," Deku continued. Then something else poked his mind. A thought he had since the beatdown he gave to the heroes. Deku looks at Kodaki, who eagerly waiting for him to speak. Its master's voice always makes the ghost bird feel like home. "Another thing though. What was that all about yesterday?" He spoke with his thoughts rolling all around his brain. "I felt like I'm a psychopath. I behaved somewhat different. Like I almost ignored the cleanse his soul first part of the plan. That big fireman messed up my senses of holding back a punch. What do you think?" "Huh. It's always me who talks about random nothings. It's your turn, buddy," Deku said, playfully poking Kodaki. The raven bird loved that, and its eyes glowed. A sign that its mind linking with Deku. "Oh. You think so?" "I had my doubts. Theoretically. My nerves acted along with his sin soul, and I basically just gone cold like Endeavor. Either way, I don't care as long as he ever revert back into what he was few hours ago. He better stay better. Deku said, and the last part of his sentences came out as a mumble. A habit he had before he died. And now it's back. Accepting what or who he is does that to you. Gives you free access to the lost memories and experiences. But being the Ghost Rider, Deku knows that. He better stay dead for those who is familiar with him. He won't try to hide. But won't let them see him so easily. In fact, he doesn't care. Eliminating sinners is something he loves to do for the better tomorrow. That's why he's the true hero behind the built-up name of a mass murderer. He won't correct nobody. A true hero can withstand the harsh criticism. But there's still an exception. Deku doesn't feel like calling himself a hero. Ghost Rider is something that no words can't describe, and Deku knows that. He also know that even after all this killing the sinners and facing bunch of heroes, he's still a mystery to the outer world. Kodaki was chilling and was loving the moment. Its master do care and now petting it. Kodaki never eaten anything before it almost died. And miraculously, the death took it to this man in front of it. An angel who is a fire skeleton and terrifying. But instead of burning in the hellfire of its master, that same fire gave it a life that no animal ever got. It feels living luxury. With the hellfire enhancing its physical and mental abilities. The ability of thinking enhanced as well. That made it appreciate its master's kindness. They sat there, cherishing the moment. No crime happening so far. The news of the beatdown really kicked fear into some thugs, it seems. At least that's how it felt though. Then something happened. Deku could feel a pit in his gut. A feeling. Something so far. Something that's unclear but obvious. It's almost felt like a cry for help. Maybe it is. Kodaki's head froze on point. As it felt that same thing. It's far though. Really far. Have they felt the same thing before? Yes. But never evident or obvious. This feeling sounded more like a heartbeat. Which continues and was getting louder or intensifying. However though, it only lasted few seconds. Deku slowly stood up as the feeling died down. That was something weird. He felt that same thing before. When he first became the rider and saved that boy from those thugs. And that triggered the obvious explanation. Another child is in danger. Deku looks at the direction of the feeling and he cannot feel it again. It means someone died on his watch. A child, that is. Deku narrowed his eyes in frustration. Even though he's too late. Maybe her soul will be in peace if he destroy what destroyed her. Maybe. But before he could think any further, the feeling of the child's cry came back. As if they never died. Deku felt the hope and relief, but then again, the feeling stopped. Like she's dead again. What is this? Why is it happening? He asked to himself. The feeling lived and died live forever. He never dealt with anything like this ever. But he won't sit here doing nothing. He looks at Kodaki and looks down at his motorcycle on the ground and looks at Kodaki again. Guess what? We're running out of time. How about we become one? Somebody really needs us. Deku said, and Kodaki understood what he meant. Let's go then. He said as both of them started to heat up and let out black smoke. Meanwhile at the dormitory, students all gathered up in the living room. Aizawa wanted them there. Shoto still haven't returned yet. Izumi sat there along with everyone, discussing random things. Okako was visibly tensed because of things happening to the hero community. Dying villains and strangers wasn't enough. Now the iconic heroes are dying too. For what? Why is this happening? She wondered. What? Mineta butted in. He, being a pervert, still managed to get his chances fruitful. But now he too is scared shirtless of what's going on. Everyone looks at her, including Izumi. Okako sighed. I mean, you know what? People are dying. Even heroes who saves those people. And we're heroes too, right? She says, and that lone line freaked out almost everyone, and Mineta screams in terror. You saying that? We're gonna be next. We're gonna die too? Oh crap. Crap. No. I don't wanna die. He screams and hugs Sui. As always. He earned a slap with her tongue. Everyone present there looks at each other and gulped. No. That's not what I meant. Okako said. Then. Kaminari asks. I mean. As the future heroes. What's the best way we could stand a chance against this vigilante? Remember we tried to catch that scary-looking bird? Okako asked to other girls. Boys at this point leaned more in to hear everything. The girls nodded. It was fast. Jiro said. And strong. Mina added. Like. We didn't stand a chance. Toru said. And the last hope of beating the infamous Ghost Rider got thrown out the window. We're heroes. No matter what is the consequences of standing up to face this villain. We'll stand our ground. Kirishima said in such a hype that others felt the positivity. Well. We should stop worrying. We have All Might. What could possibly go wrong? Right. Mineta said nervously. I'm gonna say to you. You ignorant fool. That bird Nomu thing was inches away from ripping off All Might head. Remember? Who destroyed that strong-ass thing? That Ghost Rider. Guy. Now you think. You should rely on All Might? Grow up. Bakugo screams and Izumi and others looks at him. Izumi didn't like his tone one bit. But she knows he's right. Well, sort of. Have faith. Katsuki. I'm sure All Might knows how to deal with this. But we won't stay quiet though. At least we could try. Izumi says. And you better keep quiet. I'm already dealing with enough headache. Came Izawa voice. Which silenced his students. They missed his presence since he was there for 2 minutes. Well. They are worried. Shoto. Didn't come back yet. The defeat of 2 higher-ranking heroes. Left a negative aura around the campus. Mr. Izawa. Almost everyone said as they saw him. I'm here. Izawa started but couldn't finish it. Because a rain of questions erupts in the room. Where's Shoto? How is Endeavor? Is Mirko out on work? Where's All Might? But the questions died down when Izawa used his quirk to look more threatening and it worked out fine. Stay quiet and listen. He ordered. They all agreed. Yes sir. They said in unison. Izawa looks at each of them and sighed. As you're all aware. The dormitory system mainly focuses on the defensive side of the future hero work you all face. Which is inevitable. Doing your studies in the boundaries of UA. Without the worry of what's going on the other side of those walls. Izawa started. Yes sir. We're comfortable here. Not much but still. Momo said. Well. That comfort zone needs to be cited for a while. Izawa said, confusing everyone. What? Zero said. You mean? We no longer staying at the dorms? Izumi asked. Everyone waited for an answer and looks at one another. What I meant is something way more profitable. Principal Nizu thought of this plan carefully. A camp. Izawa said. There was a silence and before everyone could scream. Izawa activated his quirk. Before you say anything. This is not a tour. But a training camp. You all go through intense training. Double the stuff you're all doing here at the gym. If you want to stand your ground against any threats. Take this camp seriously. Class B will be there as well. We won't throw you at any danger. But train you enough to face it. Izawa finished his words. That's all. With that being said. He left. That's all. Izawa said then left the room leaving all startled students behind. A training camp? Why there is a training camp? Isn't Principal Nizu wanted them from harm's way? That's the reason why the dorms exist in the first place. Right? To keep them safe? Then why a training camp happening so openly? They got notification on their phones just as Izawa left. The timing was perfect. Nonetheless. It says the following. Dear students of UA Academy. As the principal. I am informing you all about the training camp. Which scheduled to conduct openly at one of our trusted training grounds. Wednesday morning. Class 1A and 1B is requested to join their teachers outside by the bus. More information will given upon departure. Momo has the only one holding the phone while the others gathered around her. Okay. That was a bit too sudden. Kirishima said. I'm sure it is. Kaminari agreed. But I thought we're not supposed to go outside. Sari reminded. Well. Unless you have a teacher to guide. Aitsa said. Wait for what Principal Nizu has to say. We don't know where are we going. Right? Let's just hope it's not somewhere open. Momo said. We can't change whatever is gonna happen. Kuro. Azui said. Besides. I suggest think through this in a positive way. We're gonna train like never before. Are you guys not excited about that? Izumi said, and others looks at each other and nodded slowly. Izumi's right. Running won't help us get stronger. Besides. We are a great team, right? Teamwork bring down giant ass villains before. Toru hyped up. Yeah. Whatever. I taking a breather. Don't know about you nerds. But I'm feeling trash with you all in this room. Bakugo announced as he opened the sliding door to the backyard. Yeah. Air is pretty thick here. Kirishima added and followed Bakugo. Others don't have any other suggestions and followed both boys to outside. Izumi shrugged off the uneasiness in her mind. Since her outbreak at sports festival, there's something nagging her calm mind. Maybe the defeat weighing her down. Moments like these. A little brother like Izuku would have been helpful. Sadly, there's no more of that green-haired boy. He died. Gosh. Ami. You keep wandering off. I was talking to you. Yurika complained. Izumi grinned sheepishly and apologetically. Sorry about that. You know it's hard to merge in with my problems. I have plenty of it to bother me. Izumi genuinely stated. Oh. No worries. I wasn't talking about anything interesting. Yurika said, and she noticed Izumi's look. A look Izumi has while she thinking of her family. Her brother. I know what you're thinking. She added. Izumi nodded. I think I will overcome this. Just the memories are too much to forget. Izumi said and gave Yurika a small smile. You don't have to forget if you only remembering it to be happy. Forget it? If you are blaming yourself for nothing. Cheer up for us. Ami. Yurika comforted. Thank you. Yura. I appreciate your words. Izumi said. They all stood there talking and laughing until it happened. A sound of swoosh came. Which was a bit loud and they felt like the ground vibrating slightly. They all caught off guard as they froze on the spot. They experienced this type of events before. But this time. There's no earthquake-like tremors. Only vibrations of something so far or high above. They all looked around and panic swelled inside their hearts as their eyes ran all over the place. Nothing was visible. But eventually it happened. Look. Up there. He's coming for us. Oh shit, shit. We're gonna die. Mineta shrieked in horror and points up at the sky. They looked at the sky and saw it. The green fire glow piercing through the lower clouds like an aeroplane and with an unsettling and frightening sound. The vigilante who up until now never gave anyone a clue of his flight abilities. And they're sure that's the Ghost Rider passing by. It's almost impossible to forget that light and color of the mystic fire always wrapped around him. The horrors of USJ still as clear as day in their mind. The onslaught they witnessed. The deaths of villains who overpowered them. The annihilation of the bird monster who almost killed All Might. Like an apex predator. The previously known green flame appeared that day. Wiped out everything and everyone on his path. Now they are seeing the vigilante flew by. Like always, they're glad Mineta words never came quite right. Because the vigilante just flew across and out the visual reach. And first time they're glad. Mineta's screams never came to reality. Bakugo somehow irritated by it and used his explosion to fly up to the rider. At least he tried. His explosion didn't work out somehow. Keep your anger concealed. Bakugo. I'm sure you could have a long life if you stay. Came Izawa voice. Who happens to be right behind them. They all looked at him and he is already looking at the distant green dot light. Even my quirk seemed no effect on him. That's why you're all going to the camp. Overwork on those quirks and make a better use of them. Remember, it's smart to lay low to avoid danger. Strike with a plan. Not with distracted mind. He said. The students are now don't know what to feel. The eraser head. Who could erase any quirk? Cannot erase the quirk of this vigilante. And that feeling alone scared them even more. They are looking at the vigilante and still he's a complete mystery for them. What is he? Where did he even came from? Why he's on a killing spree? Why they're still alive after what happened at USJ? And why didn't kill All Might? Ghost Rider saved one hero, only to kill dozen more. Izumi's eyes stay glued on the vigilante and sighed. She have to admit one thing though. That green fire is so beautiful that it could hide the danger in it. Unlike any type fire or fire quirks, the fire of the vigilante seems more outworldly and mesmerizing. Even progressing so far from eyesight, the beauty of the flame still can be spotted. And being a pyrokinesis quirk user, she's so jealous of the Ghost Rider. Her flames don't possess such the glory and beauty. Elsewhere, a small box laid on top of the brown polished table, which was hallway empty. Inside the blue metallic box was neatly arranged red objects that highly resembled bullets. Well, technically they are bullets, but for a different purpose than killing. The production itself is as gruesome and bizarre as the use of the bullets. Aside from the neat brown table, nothing else in the room was as neat. White paint jobs and tiles now has the messed up color of red. And papers and tubes scattered around it. And the said red color isn't just a color. Pure blood. Fresh and warm. Wasted on the ground like it held no value. Maybe the sickest part of it not the blood itself. The source is way more tragic and horrifying. There laid a child, clad in white and covered in her own blood. Her breathing was heavy and lagged, almost as if she's crying with dry eyes. However, no physical injuries could be spotted on her small figure despite the fact that the blood came out of her veins and flesh. No open wounds, but lot of blood. Messed up as it is. Her father sat on one of the couches, away from any filth, and he eyed the bullets and the girl evenly. By that look alone, it's not hard to guess who's hurting the poor child. Have you behaving all bratty? Airy. He spoke in his calm and collected demeanor. See what I did? You should have been in your room playing with those toys I brought for you. Instead, you outsmarted that new babysitter and tried to run away. Because of you, I have his filthy blood all over me. All because you. Overhaul, the leader of Shihasaikai, said to his daughter. You should known that the less painful way for this is to be a good girl and obey me. He finished. Overhaul. There's something, one of his henchmen said while entering the room. Chrono was already next to Overhaul. Did it work? Overhaul asked. Not quite. They tried it on a hero at the city. They reported to seeing the effects of the drug nullify within 10 to 5 minutes. The beta version is not what they are looking for. The bullet sale dropped in past few hours. Nobody willing to try it out. Unless it's a guarantee. The goon reported. Overhaul sighed. A positive start. Nonetheless. How come? Chrono wondered. It was expected to not work out as we need. Give it some rounds. And I'm telling you we have lot of time. Overhaul states and looks down at the broken little girl, who at this point lost head faith and hope. She heard him. But there's nothing else to do but to wait for more pain. But fate has different plans it seems. Boom. Yakuza bass shook violently, with an ear-splitting banging sound, like a bomb explosion. Lights exploded and the hallways and rooms envelopes in darkness. White walls cracked and tiles started to break. What is that? Mimic screams. The small man almost face-planted on the ground by the force but managed to remain his balance. Lights are out. What could it be? Shin wondered. If it's a planned attack is my concern. Chrono said. You mean heroes found us? But how? Shin asked. No. I don't think it's the heroes. They don't have any evidence to open fire. Probably it's one of those villain groups we're in touch with few years ago. I think someone really is not happy with our services. Overhaul calmly states. Is security systems functional? He asked. No. Only my tablet working. Chrono said, and he types a few things in the screen and sighed. The main generator's destroyed. The backup one needs to be activated manually. Chrono said. You heard him. Mimic. Overhaul says, and the small figure nodded. For you, Overhaul. He shouted and grabbed a syringe out of his mask and injected it into his neck. The small villain immediately grew in size, taking a shape of a bulky muscular man, and immediately submerged into the concrete floor. With all the ruckus going on, Eri dragged herself into the corner of the room and curled up into a ball. Her shaking figure is enough to tell that she's terrified. She can't even deal with her father. And now there's a possible villain attack. Either way, she's still at the receiving end of pain. That's what she thinks anyway. Soon enough, the hallways automatically repairs as Mimic used his quirk to manipulate the concrete. The objective he was given is to manually activate the secondary power generator. And you have to go all the way middle of the labyrinth-like hideout. Nobody else could see him, obvious. Because he's inside the walls. That doesn't mean he can't see them. Roaming around the facility, whilst fixing the damage on the way, he headed straight to the power supply room. Beboom. Another blast could be heard, and the shockwave and tremors badly affected Mimic, who happens to be inside the conductor of the tremors, which happens to be walls. Arg, damn it. Mimic screeches when he felt the sound blasting in his ear. Which moron is it? I swear I crush them into a bloody pulp. He screamed, extremely annoyed. I gotta turn on the generator. He grumbled and proceeded on his way. Faster than before, until he was forced to halt on his way. His eyes widened in horror at the sight, and behold, the upper part of the Yakuza base is gone, exposing their secrets to outer world. The house on the top is just a pile of rubble now. On the ground under the big hole was a huge crater that only forms if a small meteorite lands on it. One thing is sure. No bomb was used. Mimic knows the number one hero can do insane things like this with a flick of his finger. But what he saw around the crater don't make him believe that it was done by All Might. His gut churned and terror filled his heart. His voice hitched and eyes widened even more. There laid one of the most powerful quirk users they collected over the years, and given the opportunity to become Yakuza members. The same individuals are now nothing but burnt and melted corpses, which can be counted up to 50, 60 or even 80. As if they are nothing. Whatever attacked them is not a peace lover, it seems. He never seen this much carnage and gore in his whole life. Even Overhaul's punishment methods are less scary. By the position of the corpses, Mimic realized something. They are set afire while they were alive, and when they were melting like iron, they tried to crawl away or roll around. What's taking so long? Came Overhaul's voice through his earpiece, and he flinched. It's horrible, it. Horrible out here. Our men. Mimic screams back. You gotta see this. With that being said, Mimic rushed to the power room and struggled to activate the generator with his shaky hands. There's only one CCTV survived the blast, and when the power came back, the monitors of the lab lighten up with bunch of static screen and one screen with footage. Just like Mimic. No words came out of their mouth. Because they never seen things like this. Sure, they are used to seeing blood and gore. Nothing ever come close to the carnage in front of them. Within seconds, 80% of what they built up got destroyed with the men they recruited over years. What do we do? Overhaul. Mimic asked, still staying inside the walls. For a short time, Overhaul was silent. Evacuate. Take Eri and our project somewhere else. Understood. Mimic heard Chrono and Shin reply. But before he could reply, boom. Something fell, or more like thrown into the already existing crater from the sky. This time too, a large amount of debris flew around, and smoke and dust blocks his vision of view. What the? He mumbled and looks closer at the thing. And due to his quirk, he can barely see what's going inside the dust cloud. A huge wounded and bloodied figure laid still, and half of his body got burnt. Mimic soon realized who that is. Rikiyakatsu came. The powerhouse of the group. Now laid there beaten and wounded. Overhaul and others saw that too via the camera, and right away they knew they should be more quick if they want to avoid the attacker. Mimic was about to do something when he saw the green light up in the sky, which descending faster than sound towards the ground. The green light stopped just before touching the ground and hovered up in the air. Mimic saw the appearance of the attacker. Black burning leather outfit, hoodie covered face and green fire all over their body. And they were holding a hug fire spiky sledgehammer and chains. The figure has wings coming out of their back, which is made out of black blade-like feathers. Mimic cannot see their face due to the green fire coming out of his hood. The figure looks down at Rakia for a couple of seconds, like he's trying to figure out something. Mimic was froze on his spot, out of fear he never experienced before. Sure, he's unsure and a bit cowardly than his comrades, but now he's terrified. Mimic didn't know what to do, but he felt a relief. Nobody can spot him in his hiding place. He can see them, but they can't see him. At least that's how he wanted it to end. However, Mimic then saw the figure slowly looking up and towards him. Mimic tried to convince himself that nobody could spot him. Just that. He cannot believe himself on that. The figure stayed there, fixated in the air looking at his direction, causing goosebumps all over his body. The next second, the figure was right in front of the wall after moving weirdly and inhumanly. Mimic flinched in surprise, and before anything he could do, the figure slams his fist into the wall, so roughly that the thick wall shattered, and the impact hit the villain right in the gut. Mimic felt the wind knocked out of him and a metallic taste of blood followed. A metal grip took a hold of Mimic neck and ripped him out of the wall and raised him up, so his feet dangling a feet above the ground. WH. Huari, asshole. Mimic screams, but it wasn't understandable. Mimic saw the figure tilting their head sideways, looking at him for something. But before anything, a wall of crystal slams onto the figure's hands, which only could loosen up their grip on Mimic. I suggest you let him go. A man's voice spoke, attracting the figure attention. The crystals shattered as the figure swings the sledgehammer at it. There stood the remaining Yakuza except for Overhaul. Chrono. They already evacuating, and the rider knows that the child he's here to save is in their hand, and she's afraid and hurt, which angered him more. The Yakuza was ready to strike except for one, Rappa, who stood behind them. Seeing their fighting stance, his gloved palm brightened, and in front of their very eyes, Mimic screams in agony as his body dissolved due to the heat. The bones crumbled and fell on top of the bloody pile. Seeing their manager die like that kicked up fear in their hearts, and they looked at each other and mustered up enough courage and dashed at the Ghost Rider. Shin aiming gun and others except Rappa powered up their quirk to attack. Deku normally kill the sinners one by one. However, this little child really need comfort. For that he gotta be quick. Up until now, Kodaki and him was in a spirit bond that helped them to merge, and seeing them coming closer, they got separated in a second, and the wings on the rider turned back into Kodaki. Kodaki, without wasting time, took off in the missile speed and stabbed through every villain who's striking at its master. Kodaki stabbed right through their chests, killing them all in seconds. With the job done, Kodaki looks at Rappa, who was frozen on his spot. However, the rider didn't sense any fear in Rappa's heart, but only admiration and wonder. Rappa is a fair fighter, and that alone makes him different. So, that's what you can do? But I won't let you pass unless I'm dead, Rappa said, and readied his fists. I can see my death, so I request you to beat me by yourself, Rappa said. Kodaki returned to its master and out of the fight. The rider was in front of Rappa in a second, and both started to punch each other in lightning speeds. The fists of both connects each other, and Rappa was clearly the only one having serious damage. The rider punches like a meteor shower compared to Rappa bullet-like punches, and with few more seconds Rappa chest punctured and blood splashes around, but he refused to stop. However, the rider can sense the satisfaction of Rappa, who's finally happy because of the opponent he got. And there's no going back now. Within seconds the rider right fist punches through Rappa. The fatal wound hurted a lot, but Rappa died with grin on his face, despite the fact mask covering his face. Meanwhile, Chrono and Overhaul rushed to get out of the facility through one of the many passages, and up until now, they didn't thought they have to almost run. They're men supposed to hold the attacker or possibly kill him. But with Chrono tablet, they saw almost everything that happened. And only Chrono figured out who they are dealing with. The news and rumors of a dangerous vigilante on a killing spree. Hardly ever noticed by Yakuza. Considering their workloads are too much. Yakuza barely watches news at this point. But being the assistant of Overhaul, he did his fair amount of researches, and during one of several updates, he heard that some of the fellow drug dealers gone silent or was brutally murdered. Everyone blames only one individual for that. And that said individual is a vigilante. I think I know whose this guy is. Chrono spoke. I don't think it matters anymore. We're gonna make it out of here and start over again. Overhaul stated. Where are we going? Our hideouts aren't available for us, remember? Chrono asked. A random building is enough to build up what we started. Just. I want all the dirt cleaned. Overhaul said. With the exit few meters away. They considerably slowed down. Maybe it was overconfidence or ignorance. Whatever it was. They did the wrong thing. Beboatum. The loud blast startled them and the wall in front of them got destroyed. Dust cloud formed and they could only see green bright light inside it. Eri froze and almost activated her quirk in fear. The loud blast was a bit too much for her. She snuggled closer into Chrono's hands. Not because he comforts her, but because there's no other place she can go. When the smoke cleared, they saw the bird that wiped out the rest of their men. Even though it is smaller than them, it's way more dangerous than anything. Its skeletal and hellish appearance scared Eri even more and she whimpered. Never in her life she saw something like that. Overhaul wasn't scary enough that a ghost-like bird trying to kill them. Soon enough the metal footsteps could be heard and out of the hole in the wall came out an equally fiery humanoid. I don't care who or what you are. I suggest you leave. You killed my men and infiltrated my home and I think you achieved enough. We're both killers and consider it as a deal. Overhaul said and slightly removed his gloves. He's not a fool. And knows there's a chance the fire guy will decline the deal. Ghost Rider however stayed still and silent, which freaked them out. When you're facing something unknown and silent, it makes that individual even more mysterious and terrifying. I think he's the vigilante people are talking about. Overhaul. His motives are unknown or theirs isn't one. Chrono said, attracting their Overhaul attention. Chrono felt Eri stiffen and both of them noticed it as well. When they looked back at the rider, he's already in front of them. And it wasn't even a second. Overhaul reacted quickly and ducked, touching the ground, creating spikes out of the ground. The spikes was huge and capable of killing anything. But the spikes melted before even touching the rider, who tilted his head sideways looking at him, hiding his surprise. Kai manipulated the ground and created walls between them and the rider. Here, take this. Chrono handed over the pistol containing the quirk erasing bullets. Overhaul aimed the gun as a fist punches through the wall and the rider walked out of the rubble. Overhaul aimed directly at the rider chest. And fired. Conveniently. The rider didn't dodge or move out of the way. Just stood there as the bullet hits him. For a split second they thought it worked. But nothing happened. Why isn't it working? Overhaul shouted. I think it takes time. Maybe his quirk - Chrono was cut off short as dozens of chains came out of the ground and snaking around him, and just Kodaki out of nowhere came and snatches Eri out of his hands and flew out of the area. She screamed in fear, but for now Deku has an abusive father and a fellow supporter to deal with. What the? Both Chrono and Overhaul mumbled, and soon enough, Chrono was screaming in pain. The chains developed a spiky edge and tighten around him, tearing his flesh and melting it at the same time. Chrono was killed rather painfully but quickly. Overhaul's eyes widened in shock and all he did was punch on the floor to create spikes, barriers, and weights, but none of it harmed the rider, who just like before came face to face with Overhaul, and instead of attacking, he reverts back into his human form. Overhaul didn't realize it, but both his hands are trapped by Izuku's strong grip and it is bended so he cannot touch and kill Deku. Overhaul only could see Deku's two green eyes that felt like staring at his soul, and Overhaul also felt his confidence dying. I'm sure you weren't scared few minutes ago. Why? I can see fear in your eyes. Maybe all it takes to break your will is by slaughtering your strong sidekicks. Deku started. Do you know why they had to die? It's because you corrupted their morals and brainwashed them to work with you. All of them committed sins that is unforgivable. They didn't even feel sorry for a child. Who? W. You used your abilities in a sick manner and that's why you're not allowed to have it again. With that being said, Overhaul felt his hands heating up and an unintentional scream escaped his mouth and he screamed even more as the pain grew. Soon enough both his hands crumbled into ashes. For what you did to that child. I'm gonna make you experience the pain you caused upon others. The burnt part of his hands lightened up and the hellfire got inside of his veins which was agonizing and finally the penance stare followed. Overhaul saw and felt their pain. His screams could be heard all around the place and Deku finally drops him. Overhaul will die but very very slowly. Painfully. Slower than any other kills Deku has done. And Deku got the idea of how long the hellfire keep him alive. Almost 6 to 7 hours. Even if anybody tried to save him. It's impossible to. Deku walked out of the hallways and towards the top of the destroyed Yakuza base until he stops outside a door. He could hear a heartbeat. Which was beating slow. The soul of the individual has done sins. But they weren't unforgivable. Deku knew. The girl Eri needs someone. Izuku opened the door and saw an old man laying there with many tubes running in his body. Deku immediately knew what happened. The old man showed mercy to S homeless boy and that same homeless boy did this to him. The serum was still present in the old man's vessels and he placed his gloved hand on the man's chest. The warmth of the hellfire mixed with the bloodstream of the old man and to an extent increased the immunity and even destroyed half the venomous serum. But Deku could do only that. The old man's body is fragile to completely destroy the serum. But with what he done now, the true leader of Yakuza will wake up eventually. Izuku knew where the girl is and proceeded to walk. Kodaki and Eri was outside the hideout and Kodaki already shifted back to a normal raven. But she's still afraid of it. Izuku slowly and carefully walked closer to her causing her to crawl back. She's scared of him and she's thinking he will kill her too. Izuku knew it and lowered his hood revealing his face and white hair. Hello there Eri. Please don't be scared. Okay. I'm helping you out. Nobody will hurt you okay, he comforts her but wasn't as successful as he thought but he cannot do anything about it. I'm here because you were in pain. Sorry if I scared you. Izuku said and that attracted her attention. You're lying. She mumbled. I cannot change your opinion. So I leave it be. But I know something about you. Izuku said. What? She asked. You don't like your quirk. Am I right? He asked and her already big eyes widened even more. How do you know? She stuttered. Really how this stranger know? I know because I'm here to help you. Why? I'm a nobody. Because of me people died. I'm a curse. She said and tears fell. Crying is something so normal for her. The torment she gone through and the pain she endured. If you were a nobody, I would have ignored you. I'm here because you matter. That words lifted some weight out of her heart. Really? Really? I was just like you Eri. People hurted me too. But turns out, my service do matter in this world. Saving precious people like you is what I'm doing. Izuku said. I'm not a nobody. Then. Eri asks. Haha. You are way better and precious than people who lives in this world. They think they own the world. But you Eri. Keep thinking if you're bad. And only good people think that way. So. Will you let me help? He asked. Eri was hesitant at first but nodded slowly. Izuku nodded and touched her horn and instantly it vanished in green fire. Eri only felt a sting though. Izuku was about to say something but he heard police sirens. Heroes and police are on their way. The disturbance of the explosion he caused must have gave away the location. There. With the quirk you fear is gone. I'm sure you won't see yourself as a curse anymore. The police are coming. Will you wait here? I'm sure they'll take good care of you. He asked and Eri touched her forehead and nearly busted in joy when she realized she ain't no monster anymore and without any thoughts she jumped and hugs Deku. And she immediately felt safe in his arms. Like he's some kind of guardian angel of hers. He has the aura of an angel. Unless you don't mind his hell formation. Izuku froze as well. When was the last time someone hugged him? He don't remember but still happy that she trusted him in a very short time. Now. Eri. I must go now. Remember me if you want anything and I will know. He said and Eri slowly released her grip and nodded. Heroes will give you a place to live and if anything goes wrong. Don't worry. I'll be there. He assured her and whistles. Eri was surprised when a motorcycle emerging from the ground. Deku mounted the bike and drove away. A long-planned operation ended the day before. Operating Shihasaikai. They investigated and patrolled the area for some time now. They heard some nasty rumors and almost got some info on the organization. Shihasaikai is a long-lost organization that everyone thought gone silent. Until recently. Mirio Togata came across some suspicious incidents. Multiple times. Some criminals claimed that they're in business with Hasaikai. The negative side was obviously the lack of evidences and witnesses. Nitai Agency was the leading group who is assigned to track down the organization by collecting the evidences of the illegal activities they're rumored to be committing. They had a lead. That's it? They had. What happened next wasn't something they were expecting the slightest. Sir Nitai heard of this ghost rider. Vigilante. At some point of the first week the rider appeared. Nitai was one of the investigators that approached by the higher-ups. He had enough to worry about that time and declined. Up until now Ryder never messed with his duties. It all happened yesterday. Like usual. Nitai and everyone in the mission was doing their meeting. The topic of discussion was whether or not involve other few heroes on the mission. They mostly done with the decision and there's when they got a phone call. Shihasaikai has fallen. The rider was there and massacred every single one of the occupants with exception of only 2 individuals. They heard the gruesome details and they immediately reached the site. The horror awaiting them was sickening. Frightening and disturbing at the same time. Only a monster is capable of this killings. The ghost rider did it. The one he refused to pay much attention to. Sir Nitai only heard of his doings because of how little free time he had. He barely even watched the news. He even didn't pay much attention to Mirio words. Well, the news of All Might new successor caused that. Nitai wasn't so happy at first knowing what happened. But now he's seeing with his own eyes. The ghost rider turned out more frightening than he ever imagined. The sight of the destroyed hideout. Mutilated burnt the melted corpses and an alive but slowly dying Kaichisaki was enough to give them nightmares even when they are wide awake. Nitai however was surprised to find out something else. 2 occupants survived. The rider saved them according to one of the survivors. Her name is Eri. Strangely she wasn't scared or disturbed. But had that glow of happiness and relief in her eyes. That's why today everyone gathered in his office again. Including other heroes that came across the rider. Aizawa. All Might. Midnight. Present Mike and also Mirko was there. She's the only one who saw the rider real identity and she haven't told them that. But she will. So. You weren't taking this seriously until now. One of the heroes questioned Nitai. No. I refused to investigate because it was out of the perimeters of my agency. Shihasaikai was our main target and we heard of a drug they're producing. Nitai reasoned. The local hero questioned him scoffed. Drugs? Really? Have you ever heard of TV before? Or at least heard of what's going on with that freaking vigilante? Murdering. Saving. Murdering again. Like he's crazy. The hero said. I've heard of his activities around the areas. But I also knew how strong and experienced heroes are patrolling there. I don't see my role and besides. Shihasaikai is one of the dangerous organization ever ruled Tokyo. I started investigating on them before this vigilante showed up. Nitai calmly stated. Don't take him seriously, sir. This dude thinks he's better than everyone. Just ignore him. We understand your reasons. One of the female local heroes said politely and dared the arrogant local hero to speak. He obviously didn't and only scoffed. Nitai sighed and looks at All Might and observed his form. Nitai immediately spotted the pain in the number 1 hero eyes. He's hardly even keeping his buff form steadily. Nitai then looks at all the heroes who ran into the vigilante and finally set his eyes on a tired-looking Mirko. Pro-hero Mirko. He called her and everyone looks at her. She slowly looks at him and nodded to continue. As far as I'm aware. The last heroes encountered the rider is you and Endeavor. Am I correct? He questioned and looks at everyone else to confirm it. They can't tell who's seen the vigilante in person and everyone looks at Mirko. Yes. Endeavor was leading one and at some point ditched us. I followed him and the rider already was talking to him. I don't know half of what they were saying. But I only heard him saying his name. Ghost Rider. She explained. Nightai nodded. But I'm wondering something else. Nightai said, which caused everyone to look at him. That is. Gran Torino asked. How come you aren't injured if he attacked both of you? He asked. Every eyes are on her now. Mirko don't know what to say. Whatever happened there had no logic. She sighed and decided to tell everything. Something strange keep happening during our fight. I attacked him first though. But he tied me up with his fire chains that keep coming out of the ground and that's when I realized something. Endeavor is his target. Not me. And I think Endeavor never found him. He found Endeavor. She explained. That's something new. What's the strange part you were saying? Nightai asked. Mirko looks at them all and nodded. He knew our identities. And he was keep talking about our soul. As if he could scale it. He called Endeavor a sinner and that he has a stained soul of innocence. Something along those lines. She said, confusing the other few heroes, and she saw it. Don't ask me what that even means. Because I don't know what does that mean either. She said. Then the female local hero supported Nightai before. Slowly raised her hands to ask a question. She's the most polite one here it seems. Yes. Mirko asked. If I heard you correctly. You said that the vigilante tied you up with his fire chains, right? But your body doesn't look like sustained any burns at all. She asked. Everyone looks at one another and then at Mirko. They didn't thought of that. I don't know. I'm sure chins were looking like they're about melt. It wasn't hot even if looks like it. But the strange thing is. Endeavor flesh was melting when the chains got a hold of his hands. And the chains were moving like they're alive or something. That kid got some strange and frightening abilities that has no logic behind it. Mirko said. Everyone's eyes widened when heard that, but Nightai eyes widened because he heard something else. What did you mean by that, kid? Mirko. He asked. The room was silent all of a sudden. Nobody uttered a word. She called him a kid. They wondered. Mirko wasn't thinking before speaking out loud. She called him a kid and that means she have to explain the rest. Including how she saw his face. Mirko. You saw his face? All Might was the one asked that. Mirko looked at their questioning gaze and knew she cannot hide anything. Yes. He's just a kid. But more terrifying and outworldly. I'm still afraid of what I saw. She started. Why haven't you told that sooner? Some of them asked in unison. Because I couldn't even believe my eyes. Before I landed a punch on him. He was just a kid with a demonic voice. But after he tied me up and Endeavor. He transformed into a real ghost it seems. His flesh and skin was gone. He transformed into a burnt dark skeleton with green fire covering his head. He even transformed back into his normal appearance when he did something to Endeavor. That fire skeleton stared into Endeavor's eyes. Endeavor was screaming in pain. Not because of the fire chain eating away his flesh. He was in pain because something I don't understand. After he's done. He created a portal and was gone. She explained all in one breath. Everyone looks at her as if she's gone crazy or something. There's so much information that's hard to believe. Before anyone could say anything, Midnight raised her hand. Some of you don't look like you don't believe her. But his Firebird also resembles a skeleton. She said. Firebird? You say? Nightai asked. Yes. The Ghost Rider has a pet bird. So intelligent. Strong and deadly. The last time I saw it, it was killing bunch of villains. Just like its owner. That bird cuts off limbs and leaves them to die. Midnight said the gruesome details. Pet bird? What else this vigilante possess that I'm not aware of? Like I heard of his crimes in many areas of the city. How can he be everywhere so fast? The local hero asked. At USJ. He appeared on big burnt truck that's on fire, and the other time we saw him, he was riding a bike covered in fire. Midnight said. Nightai listened to it all, and even he tried using his quirk but was unsuccessful. He looks at Mirko and remembered what she said. So you're saying that a kid is behind this massacres? He asked. Don't believe me if you don't want. But I told you everything I saw. Mirko replied. In my whole career as a hero, I've faced deadly foes and witnessed murders and catched murderers. Seen massacres, and never before I've seen a kid behind it. I've seen his strength, and this deadly foe causing nightmares to everyone is just a kid. Unbelievable. All Might said to himself, but others heard it too. Then there was a silence. Nightai already asked Mirko to remember the rider face so an officer could draw it with her description. Few minutes have passed since then. What about the survivors of the Hasaikai incident? Gran Torino asked. 2 survived. A child named Eri and her grandfather, who's also the former leader of Shi Hasaikai. Strangely, the girl Eri is happy. She said the rider was there because she was in pain. Turns out, Overhaul was experimenting on her. Eri said. The rider got rid of her quirk she hated so much. I don't know how, but the rider actually got rid of her quirk. Nightai said, shocking everyone. What are you talking about? Now he can take quirks too? How? The local hero asked for everyone else. I don't know. But there's something I want to ask you, Eraserhead. Nightai said, and Aizawa nodded. Eri grandfather hasn't woke up yet, and considering her mental state, an open environment will help her. Why don't you let her stay here with your students at the dormitory? It will help her to get better. Nightai requested. Aizawa raised a brow and sighed. What other choice do they have? Sure. First we need Principal Nizu agreement, and then Eri can stay there. I can't guarantee if she turns out any better if she stayed with bunch of problem children, he said, and Nemuri and Mike sweat dropped. Svayish. Everyone in the room snapped their heads in direction of the sound and had their eyes bulging out when seeing a green fire portal made of fire chains. Every heroes present there wasn't expecting it, and before they could stand up in a fighting position, they heard metal clicking sounds and realized they are footsteps. They immediately realized who it belongs to, and they immediately stood up and faced the fire portal across the room. Everyone charged their quirks ready to pounce anytime. However, thank you, haha, they all stiffened when they heard a small female sound. Then a metal underside boot steps outside the portal, followed by the rest of the body of the rider. They could attack now but realized something else. The portal disappeared behind the rider and their eyes widened when they saw he was holding Eri in his hands. Oh, you're welcome, Deku said and chuckled, and he had his hood already up. Deku then looks at the heroes and they saw 2 green eyes staring back. Wow. Eri. That's some company you got there. Deku jokes, pointing at the heroes. Eri stiffened on his hand and nervously looks at the heroes. She's not used to being around these people. They don't have that brotherly aura around them like Deku. He sensed it and shook his head and moved closer to the heroes and placed her on top of the desk. Deku looks at the heroes and back to Eri. Don't worry. It's alright to trust them. They're good guys, he said, surprising everyone. But if they're bad, I'll punish them. So don't worry, okay? He comforted, and Eri nodded. Deku ruffled her hair and then the heroes saw his right hand glowing green. For a second they thought he's gonna attack. But Deku summoned a beautiful fire covered with glow of his hellfire. The flower was so beautiful and nobody seen something like that before. He gave it to Eri, who took it happily, and even though the flower has the hellfire on it, Heroes was surprised to see that it doesn't done any harm. Every eyes are on him. The murderer behind the massacres. The one and only Ghost Rider is here in front of them and they can't even attack without hurting Eri. His presence demanded respect and promised dominance. Even All Might don't have THA aura around him. Duty calls. Eri. I'm going. Just call me when you feel lonely. I'll be there. And place that flower in a flower pot. I'm sure it will become a beautiful plant. He said to Eri, who nodded. Deku then looks at every one of the heroes and his eyes finally landed on the arrogant local hero. Deku points his finger at the hero, making him flinch. You're guilty. But I'll forgive you. If you ever take tips from innocents you're supposed to protect, I'll be there. Be a hero the society needs or you'll be down in hell. I'll make sure of it, Deku threateningly said. Eri was calm because Deku's comforting hand was on top of her head. The local hero started to sweat and everyone looks at him. The heroes are confused. But the local hero knew what he's saying. Nightai was trying to use his quirk on Deku. But shockingly he couldn't. Your foresight won't work on me, Mirai Sasaki. I'm not here for any of you, Deku said, and Nightai was surprised to hear that. Who are you? Why are doing this? What is your goal? The female local hero asked in a small nervous voice. Deku looks at them frighteningly. The corrupted hero society is the reason I'm here. The soul of the innocents needs the justice they deserve. How many of you knew about that lab I destroyed last week? Had many children was being treated as slaves and was being sold as if they are objects. How many of you knew about Eri? He asked, and nobody has the answer for that. Only me, I guess, Deku said. But who are you to decide who's the criminal and who's the innocent? We have law. You're a murderer on a killing spree, Midnight said. Deku felt Eri tense but calmed down again when he patted her head again. I don't care about your law. As far as you stay as the good heroes you are, you're on my good side. If I was just someone with no goal, you won't be standing there, he replied, and looks at Eri, who is admiring the flower he gave her, and looks at the heroes again. Keep her happy all the time. She deserves it. This flower is a token of her bravery and toughness. She's a survivor. Either of you take it away from her. You are insulting her life. She gone through a lot. Trust me, I know, Deku said. We won't harm her. We do care about her. But we'll capture you. Your way is unacceptable, Mirko said. They wanted to capture him now. But Eri is still here. Of course you will. That's the real words of a hero, Deku said, and crouched to face Eri and tilted his head sideways. See you later, Eri. Remember me like you did today. I'll be there for you. We'll visit the amusement park again, he said, and the portal opened behind him again and Kodaki flew in, and Midnight recognized the bird even though it is no longer a fire bird. Kodaki landed on Deku's shoulder and Eri eyes lit up. Hello, Kodaki. I'll miss you too, she said, touching Kodaki's head. Heroes stood there, watched as the bird let her pet it. It even has a name, Midnight wondered. Other heroes heard her and figured out this is the same skeleton fire bird she was talking about. Take care, Eri. Bye, Deku said, and walked backwards, and he entered the portal before it vanished. Ghost Rider was right there and they couldn't even touch him. The heroes looks at Eri, and Nightai saw how happy she looks as she held the flower close. So, Eri, Midnight called and crouched in front of Eri, who tried to keep the flower away from Midnight. Hey. Don't worry. I won't take your flower, Midnight said. Thank you. It's the only reminder of the best day I ever had in my life, Eri said with a tearful smile. Midnight and others nodded. Ghost Rider said it was a token for great survivor. But they are not sure if the flower is dangerous or not. But they can't take it away from her. His words sounded so genuine and serious. They didn't want it to insult her life. Can I ask you? How and when the rider take you with him? And how? Midnight asked. Mr. Izu told me to remember him if I feel lonely. I wasn't expecting him to appear as he promised. He took my curse away and I was so happy when he showed me the amusement park. He bought me a search apple candy, she happily said. Izu? Izawa asked. Is that his name? Mirko asked. I don't know. I felt like calling him that, Eri replied. The meeting continued and Eri going to U.A, and the heroes were coming up with ways to capture the vigilante. With many information on him. They still don't know what to do with them. Every new info on him are completely different than the first one. He's in the end was strong enough to escape even though they were few feet away from him. Really? She's going to stay with us, Mina chirped, seeing Eri standing next to Izawa. For now. Be careful with her. I don't want her involved in any of your problems, Izawa reminded. The students gathered around living room nodded. Eri don't know what to expect. With her quirk gone. There's now another turn in her life. As far she could remember. She only remembers staying with Overhaul and being in pain. After Deku saved her. Life is so gentle with her. Even though it didn't hurt anymore. This new life is so foreign and lovely. Eri looks at everyone gathered to greet her. The lovely girls. Smiling boys. Grumpy Katsuki. And a neutral Shoto. Overall better than bunch of psycho with creepy grins. But neither of them has the warm comforting aura like her Mr. Aizu. The Ghost Rider is the best thing that happened to her. Even though he's a monster people are afraid of. Izumi eyes are somewhere else though. The white flower plant on the corner along with Eri luggage. The same flower she saw at the cemetery. The stranger who turned out to be the Ghost Rider placed on the tombstone of Izuku. Eri has it now. Izumi looks at Eri who is closely looking at Izumi and she smiled at small girl who eyes widened. Izumi didn't knew what got into her. Izumi waved the hi and crouched to Eri level. Hey there. Eri. I'm Izumi. Nice to have you with us. Izumi sweetly said and gently waved. Others seem interested by the gesture. They seen Izumi sweet but not this gentle sweet. Eri blinked few times and absent-mindedly touched Izumi cheek. You look so matching. Eri said. Izumi raised a brow and Izawa cleared his throat. Show her around. Let her use everything to play and don't be rude. Can I trust you with her? Izawa questioned. As a class representative. My duty also comes as to keep everyone on the line. Eri will be my #1 priority. Mr. Izawa. Itsu chopped the air and Eri awkwardly looks at the odd behavior. I hope so. With that Izawa left. Then everyone walked around the living room and found something to do. Some of them invited Eri but the little girl has her attention on Izumi who found it. Surprising. Strange. She doesn't know. Mina crouched next to Eri and waved small hi. Hi. I'm Mina. Can we be best friends? She happily asked and Eri eyes looks at the search pink girl and found her 2 horns interesting. They looks like 2 hooks. Can I touch it? Eri asked curiously. Mina nodded and Eri poked it a little found it more interesting. Rest of the girls and boys introduced themselves while being across the room playing games or doing their own time passes. Eri learned that waving is a friendly sign so she waved back at them and tried to smile. But she couldn't smile though. With Deku. She was laughing loud. But these people are different. Friendly but different. However she started to like them as well. They're good guys and she knows. Knows it because she's been with bad guys all the time and these people don't have that sickening aura around them. Yurika saw Izumi staring at something and when followed her gaze she saw the same flower the rider placed on the tombstone of Izuku. But this time it's a plant. Eri, can I ask you where do you get that beautiful flower? Yura asked. Eri was curiously looking at Tsu but immediately tensed up when hearing that question. But calmed down when knowing that they won't take it. It's a reminder. Mr. Izu gave me that. Eri said. Katsuki and Izumi head snapped at her direction when they heard the name and other girls also looks at her. Mr. Izu. Carries him a butted in. Yes. He said it was a token for me and gave it after he took me to amusement park yesterday. Eri replied. Everyone looks at the breathtaking beauty of the flower and some even tried to look closely. Eri all of a sudden was blocking their way. Please don't touch it. It's mine. She requested. Others realized she ain't comfortable with them near the flower and respected her request and nodded apologetically. What kind of flower it is? Anyway. Kaminari asked. The Ghost Rider flower. Yurika said without even thinking and immediately slapped her palm over her mouth. Everyone stiffened hearing his name. Eri spotted the fear in their eyes and didn't know what happened. She knows that name too. Ghost Rider is the hero name of Mr. Izu. That's all she knows. How do you know Mr. Izu? Did he save you too? Eri asked, confusing them more. Everyone looks at one another and they knew better than to tell the girl that he's a killer. But he saved them once at USJ though. Yeah, he saved us. Too. Izumi said. Eri eyes lit up when heard that. Mr. Izu saved me too. Eri said proudly. Others don't know what to say though. This Ghost Rider is definitely weird. He saves and also kills. He's sane and insane too. He's like someone with split personality disorder. So, how is Mr. Izu? Mina asked. She's one of the curious ones interested in Ghost Rider. She's the first among the group to show interest in the vigilante. She expected to hear something along the lines of, gruesome, brutal or something. He's so nice and kind. He was the only reason I'm not in pain anymore. I heard somebody call him monster. But he's the only one who taught me how to be happy. This flower makes me happy. Eri said happily. There's a long silence. The Ghost Rider is everything in their opinion but whatever she said. They can't picture a murderer being friendly unless they are trying to manipulate someone. Is the rider manipulating her? If so, why? You sure about that? I mean, he's a pretty scary dude in my opinion. Kaminari awkwardly said. Eri shook her head. Mr. Izu isn't scary when you have done nothing. Eri said the only thing she understood about deku. Her words sounded like it makes sense for them. But they don't know what to think of the vigilante. It's just matter of time before he strikes again. Who know who's going to be his next target? Izumi didn't want the conversation to continue, so she and the girls agreed to show Eri their dorms. They spent next 1 hour visiting everyone's rooms and roaming around the place and even walked outside under the night sky. Eri was so stunned to see the stars up in the sky. Eri was holding the small flower pot all the time and the girls found it cute. She's like a Tinkerbell hugging the flower. Except the flower is small. I've never seen stars before. They're so beautiful. Eri said. Other girls felt sorry for the little girl. Shihasaikai incident was live yesterday. They yet again seen the horrors caused by the rider. Censorship didn't help much. As if they could make out the scene, and their fear was something you cannot scale. Every single massacres takes away their confidence of stopping the vigilante one day. But he saved Eri and her grandfather. To save 2 people which you can save stealthily or something. The rider murdered dozens of people instead. What kind of savior is he? They wondered. Not as beautiful as you. Mina said to cheer her up even more. It worked. But eventually her mood dropped. The girls noticed it and Mina thought it was her fault. I should be thankful that Mr. Izu was there when he did. I was a curse before he helped. He told me I'm a very important person. This new life is like a good dream for me. Eri spoke and she looks at Izumi. You remind of him a lot. Eri said, surprising the girls, and they looked at Izumi, who had her eyes wide as a plate. How? She wondered. Your eyes. When Mr. Izu's eyes aren't glowing. They looks a lot like yours. Identical if I say. You saw his face? Mina asked. Yes. Why? Eri replied. Just wondering. Mina replied. The rest of the bright night. They spent playing games and eventually sleep overcome their minds. 2 days left for Wednesday. Tomorrow they have to prepare for the camp. So everyone for the first time slept earlier. At the hospital few hours ago. Fuyamai slowly walked passing many people and patients. Hospital hallways sickened her and the smell of medicine and chemical threatening hit her nose, almost causing her to throw up many times. Today is the day doctor promised to reveal the search fate of the number 2 hero. After all, the injuries are life-threatening, and just forget about his career. Endeavor hand is burnt and barely even got into a position where the amputation is not needed anymore. But the worst thing is, Endeavor still hasn't opened his eyes. He's sometimes whimpering in his sleep as if he's in a lot of pain. Fuyamai doesn't know what's going on with him. Sure, he's an abusive father. But they don't want him dead. The Ghost Rider who showed up one day caused many horrifying acts, and over the span of a week many victims got slaughtered so brutally that thinking of it scares you shitless. Fuyamai heard of him and his crimes and victims. But never in her nightmares she thought Endeavor is gonna be his next victim. Fuyamai knows Endeavor power. He's one-man army. Endeavor is one of those heroes who accomplished every impossible tasks just like All Might. Fuyamai knows what Endeavor is capable of and even knows how much he hates Ghost Rider and wanted to catch the vigilante. Fuyamai saw Endeavor prideful strength ever since she could walk for the first time. But that same Endeavor is now here. At the hospital bed fighting for his life but barely even kicking. The powerful hero has fallen because of a vigilante who one day appeared. Fuyamai now knows what kind of threat the vigilante is. As far as she knows from the news, the fight was one-sided. Even after being with Mirko, Endeavor still got hurt. A terrifying thought scared her. If Endeavor is not enough, who could possibly beat the Ghost Rider? On top of that, his name alone gives you nightmares. As she approached the ICU, her eyes caught two individuals waiting outside and she recognized them. The two of them saw her coming and tensed up. Fuyamai tried her best to smile and wave at them slowly. Mr. Tsukachi. And Pro Hero Mirko. It's surprising to see you here. Fuyamai greeted, bowing to show respect. Hey. Fuyamai, if I got that correct. Mirko wondered and got closer for a handshake. Yes, that's me. Fuyamai politely said and shake her hand with Mirko. With the introduction done and cited, they decided to come to the point. I want to start with an apology. Fuyamai. As a pro hero, my duty is to protect everyone in danger, and even if I have to sacrifice everything. Us pro heroes has that sort of mentality. However, as you know, I was with your father that day. Mirko said. Fuyamai immediately got the hint of what she's getting at and shook her head. Please. Don't apologize. Father chose his career. It's not your fault he got hurt doing it. And it's not the first time he's like this. I still remember those times I saw him with a black eye or broken nose. Just don't blame yourself for his mistakes. Fuyamai replied genuinely. Endeavor ego ain't something she's unfamiliar with. In fact, his greed for invincibility ruined their lives a long time ago. It started with their elder Search brother and almost ended with Shoto. Endeavor still has that side whenever he comedy back home. Mirko sighed, nodding in understanding. Just to let you know, I ain't was friend or anything with your father. But I should have tried harder. But there's something else we're here for. Mirko said. If it's some answers you're after, I'll answer your questions if I'm familiar with it. Fuyamai replied. Mirko nodded. Things may get personal, but we need the answers. Mirko said. Okay. Go on. Fuyamai said. So basically there's one or two questions I want to ask. So, while the rider attacked Endeavor, I heard him say something about sins that your father did to your family. I don't want to assume anything. But I trust you have our answer. Mirko said. Fuyamai knows when these types of questions are asked. Fuyamai also knows that they already came up with some answers on their own by now. Domestic abuse is one of those. If they thought of that, then they are correct. But should she answer straight away? Her father is a horrible human being. But now is not a time to go against him. If she spoke about anything against him, police will take Endeavor in custody. The worst thing that can happen if it happens, Endeavor won't get any medical attached like now. Not like they won't take care of him. But the police has enough to worry about. Endeavor treatment might get sloppy. However, Fuyamai won't defend him as well. I don't know how the Ghost Rider knows anything about us. But he's sort of right. Father is different. His ways are horrible. But that's all his characteristics, I say. But it's because of his earnings we had food on the table. But now I don't know what happens next. Fuyamai said her honest opinion. In fact, she doesn't know what other sins Endeavor has done. I don't see lies. However, we'll deal with this later. Endeavor may have broken the code of being a hero. If so, we'll see if he's guilty or not. Tsukachi said. Fuyamai nodded. Well, I do understand. He can't escape anything. She replied. By the way, any updates? Mirko wondered. I think doctor should be here already. He said it's something serious. Fuyamai said, worried. Eventually the said doctor came and nodded at them. Just in time. Detective Tsukachi and pro hero Mirko. The doctor said and looks at Fuyamai apologetically. Endeavor health progressively gets better, and that's the good news. Doctor said. Any bad news? Doctor? Fuyamai asked, concerned. Doctor looks the there of them and nodded. A very big bad news. Endeavor quirk don't seem responding like it should be. Basically, it's non-existent strangely. The doctor said, shocking the three. You mean? Tsukachi started. That Endeavor quirk no longer a part of him. I'm sorry to say this, but he's now quirkless. The doctor finished. Then there was the inevitable silence. A deafening one on top. The number 2 hero no longer has his power anymore. Thanks for watching, bye.